Okay, so in this last video we'll talk about editing a current student, and here I have the application running, and I'll just go ahead and make an edit. I'm going to get into edit mode by clicking this button. This edit button in this example, it does not have a whole lot of purpose. I think in a real application, one that's well done, you might want to experiment with having the controls disabled until they click the edit button, and then you can enable those controls. Maybe experiment with the read-only property and just make that available to the user if they want to edit. So I'm going to do an edit there. I think I clicked that button, and maybe I'll just make a change. Okay, I'm going to add Elvis's middle name, and at this point I could save those changes and actually commit them to the database, or I can cancel, in which case I would want to restore the original values. So I'm going to hit cancel, and those values were restored. So let's talk about all this. Basically, let's look at the data layer first. I'm in the data layer, so this is the edit student record. We have the current student coming through the door into a parameter S, opening the connection, setting up the update statement in the SQL. And notice we have three parameters, 3 question marks. And look at the order in which they appear in the SQL statement. The first name, the last name, and the ID lastly. Okay? So that's a typical SQL update statement. We're packaging it into the command object, which again is a vehicle to deliver that statement to the database. Now we have to create 3 parameter objects, 1 for each question mark. The values that we're providing to those parameter objects are the first name, last name, and the student ID of S who's coming through the door. All right? That's the student that we're updating. And then very importantly, order is everything here. The order in which you add the parameters to the COM_objects parameters collection must be the order in which they appear in the SQL statement. So that's why we have the first name first, last name second, and then the ID third. Executing the query and then closing the connection. So now we'll go to the main form here, and as I said, not much goes down in that edit button. I think here is where you would enable the controls if you're going to add that functionality, which is nice and professional, and you should absolutely do that. But here, what I'm doing is let me go up to the very top here. I've created like this, just a little throwaway student, just a little student object called Stu. And the reason is if I end up canceling that edit, I want to restore the text boxes as they were. So I'm using this little Stu to capture those text boxes as they are when the user hits the edit button, just in case they need to be restored in the event of a cancel operation. So let's see, in the edit button we're just capturing the current values as they are in case they need to be restored later. Those are going into Stu. So it all goes down in the save, as I've said many times, and here, so if we already talked about the adding, so we're beyond that, but this is the else is if we're editing. And all we have to do is call that edit student record, passing the current student. When the user hits a save button, the current student has those values that the new name and the new first name and the new last name that the user has typed into those boxes. And so the current student has the new values, and it gets passed to the data layer, and those values get committed to the database. Now, in the event of a cancel, let's look at this. Okay, so let's look at the else because we're talking about the edit here. Remember Stu to capture the first name and the last name, just in case, like the old values or the original values of the first and last name in case the user cancels. So that's what we're doing here. If they cancel, we're just going to restore the text boxes to what they were when the user originally started the whole thing and then changed his or her mind. Also, though, that you could cancel an add operation as well. You know what? I think to prove a point, I'm going to comment this out and run the project or run the program. So I'm going to add myself here. Okay, at this point I could save and commit that new student to the database, or I can cancel. So I'm going to cancel. And it seems like nothing happened, but, well, we can rest assured that record did not go into the data table because the insert statement was never executed. So what I'm left with is this garbage record that I don't want because it shouldn't exist. The data that we're looking at should reflect the data in the database, and this record, this garbage record, needs to be removed. So in this cancel, we are removing that garbage record is added to the, recall that when we added the new record, when we hit add new student, we created that new empty student and added it to the end of that list. The list is called roster. It has all the students in it. And so when we cancel, we're just removing that last record from the list. Okay, how do you get at the highest index of the list? You count the number of items that are in there, but subtract 1 because it's a zero-based numbering, zero-based indexes. So we'll do a remove at, go straight to the end of the list and remove that. And then you should land on the previous record. So remove it and then jump to the record before it, so we're actually looking at a viable student record. And that's it.